He saw the alien princess unclothed. Now the only escape is marriage. The palace of Zyra Prime was a maze of shining silver halls. Every wall was carved with glowing alien symbols, and the floor reflected the light like a mirror. Daniel walked carefully, his boots making soft sounds on the polished surface. He had been told not to wander, but his escort had gone to speak with another guard, and Daniel thought he could remember the way back to the guest quarters. He could not. The hallways twisted and turned, each one looking the same. At first, Daniel tried to laugh at himself, but the palace was silent, too silent. The air was thick, with the faint smell of strange flowers, and somewhere far away, music played, soft, slow, and haunting. Daniel took a turn to the left, hoping it was the right direction. His hand brushed against the cool metal wall. He passed tall silver doors, each sealed and marked with royal crests, until one door stood slightly open. A dim blue light spilled out from inside. He hesitated. He knew the rules. Guests must never enter private royal chambers. But maybe someone inside could help him find his way. He pushed the door gently. It slid open without a sound. Inside, the room was warm, steam floating in the air. It smelled faintly of sweet oils. A pool of glowing water lay in the center, and beside it stood a figure. Her back was to him, her long silver hair falling to her waist. Her skin, pale with a faint golden shimmer, was bare. Daniel's breath caught. His mind froze. This was not just any alien woman. He recognized her from the portraits. Princess Lyra, heir to the throne of Zyra Prime. The princess turned, her bright violet eyes meeting his in shock. Her lips parted as if to speak, but the sound that came out was sharp and angry. Guards. Her voice echoed through the chamber. Daniel stepped back, his heart pounding. I'm sorry. I didn't know. He didn't have time to finish. Heavy footsteps thundered toward the room. The door burst open, and two tall guards in dark armor stormed in, their weapons, long silver spears with glowing tips, pointed directly at him. Intruder. One of them barked. I'm not. Daniel started, but rough hands grabbed his arms and forced him to his knees. The princess stepped forward, her gaze cold now. Do you know what you've done, human? She asked. Her voice was calm but dangerous. Daniel swallowed. I walked into the wrong room. I didn't mean, she interrupted, on Zyra Prime. To see a royal without clothing is a crime punishable by death. The words hit him like a strike to the chest. He tried to speak, but she continued. Unless, she said slowly, her eyes narrowing, you marry that royal before the next moonrise. Daniel's mind spun. Marry her. He didn't even know her. He didn't even know the full customs of this world, but the way the guards held their spears told him this was no joke. Take him to the council hall, the princess ordered. Her tone gave no sign of mercy. The guards dragged him down the hall, Daniel's boots scraping on the polished floor. His mind raced. How could something so small, so accidental, lead to this? He thought of the warning the Earth ambassador had given him before he arrived. Be careful in the palace. Human eyes see too much here. They passed more doors, more guards, until at last they reached a vast chamber. The council hall was massive, with a high ceiling shaped like a star. Dozens of alien nobles in long flowing robes turned to look at him. Their eyes glowed faintly, their expressions unreadable. The princess entered behind him, her hair now wrapped in a golden cloth. She stood before the council. This human has violated the most sacred law of our people, she said. Her voice echoed through the hall. Gasps filled the air. The oldest council member, a tall alien with deep green skin, leaned forward. Human, he said. You have two paths, marriage or execution. Choose before the moon rises. Daniel looked from one face to another. All were watching, waiting. No one would believe the truth, that it had been an accident. The princess's eyes locked on his. There was no kindness there, only a silent challenge. Daniel's heart pounded louder than the soft hum of the council chamber. He realized then that whatever choice he made, his life would never be the same. Daniel sat in a small, cold room, the echo of the council's words still burning in his mind. The walls around him were made of dark metal that seemed to hum faintly, like the palace itself was alive. A single beam of light came from the ceiling, falling on the polished floor where his reflection looked back at him. Pale and tense, a guard stood by the door, silent and unmoving. Daniel had tried speaking to him twice, but the alien's blank stare told him nothing. Time felt heavy here, slow, as if the next moment was being dragged toward him against his will. The door finally opened, and a different figure entered. She was older than the princess, wearing a long robe with silver threads. Her eyes were sharp, weighing him like a hunter judging prey. She did not sit. "You know our law," she said, her voice low and even. "You saw the heir without her ceremonial covering. The punishment is death, unless you bind yourself to her. There is no other way." Daniel's hands clenched. "It was an accident," he said. "I was lost. I didn't mean intent does not matter here." She interrupted. "Our people believe sight carries power, and you have taken something from her that only a mate should see." Her words cut deeper than he expected. He looked away, trying to control the rush of thoughts in his mind. Back home, this would be absurd, but here, in this palace filled with laws older than his entire planet's history, absurdity had no place. She leaned closer. "You have until the moon reaches its highest light. Refuse, and your body will be returned to your world in a sealed box." When she left, Daniel felt the walls pressing closer. The silence was louder than before. Somewhere outside, footsteps passed, muffled voices speaking in the alien tongue. He could not catch the words, but he felt the tone suspicion, maybe anger. He thought of the princess, her eyes fierce, her voice calm yet cutting. She hadn't begged for mercy on his behalf. She had looked at him like he was a problem she had to deal with. But there had also been something else, a flicker in her expression, almost like surprise. The guard at the door suddenly straightened. Daniel heard more footsteps, sharper this time. The door opened again, and this time it was the princess herself. She wore an elegant dark gown that shimmered like liquid metal. Her hair was braided with thin gold chains. "You look like a man trapped between fire and water," she said, walking slowly into the room. Her presence filled the space, not just because of who she was, but because she carried herself like a storm. Calm on the surface, dangerous underneath. "I didn't mean to see you," Daniel said quickly. "I was lost. I didn't even know." "I know," she said, cutting him off. "But the law does not care, and neither does the council." She circled him like she was studying a strange artifact. "I will tell you something you will not hear from anyone else. I don't believe you wandered into my chamber by chance." Daniel frowned. "What are you saying?" Her eyes narrowed. "Someone wanted this to happen. Someone who thinks binding me to an outsider will destroy my claim to the throne." She stopped in front of him. "If you die, they win. If you marry me, they will come for you next." Her words were heavy, but her tone was not pleading. It was matter-of-fact, calculated. Daniel felt his heartbeat rise. "So either way, I'm trapped." A faint smile touched her lips. "Yes," she said softly. "But you get to choose which trap you prefer." Before he could answer, the guard stepped forward and announced something in the alien tongue. The princess gave a single nod. "The council awaits your decision," she said, then leaned closer so only he could hear. "Choose carefully, human. Once you speak, there is no turning back." She left, and the door closed behind her. Daniel stood alone, his mind turning faster than it ever had before. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that whatever choice he made, it would lead him into a game far more dangerous than anything he had faced. And the princess, fierce, unreadable, and unwilling to show weakness, was right in the middle of it. The moon outside was climbing higher, and time was running out. The council hall was brighter this time, the silver walls catching the pale glow of the rising moon through the skylight above. Daniel stood in the center, feeling every gaze pressing against him like invisible chains. The princess was already there, seated on a raised platform with the elders around her. Her expression was unreadable, her hands resting perfectly still in her lap. The oldest elder spoke first, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Human, the hour has come. Speak your choice." Daniel's throat was dry. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The air in the room seemed too thin. Every part of him wanted to shout that this was insane, that he would never agree to marry someone he had just met. But then he remembered her warning. "If you die, they win." He took a slow breath. "I'll marry the princess," he said. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some voices murmured in the alien tongue, sharp and quick. Others glared at him like he had just cursed their ancestors. The princess didn't react, but he noticed her shoulders stiffen ever so slightly. The elder nodded. "Then, it is decided. The joining will take place at the next moonrise." Daniel felt the room tilt for a moment. His life had just been rewritten in a single sentence. He glanced at the princess, but she was already standing, already turning to leave the chamber. The guards escorted him back through the halls. This time, they didn't lead him to a cell. Instead, he was taken to a chamber filled with strange fabrics and ornaments. 3 attendants were waiting, each with wide, unblinking eyes. They began measuring him without a word, wrapping him in threads of glowing silver and blue. As they worked, Daniel caught sight of movement at the far corner of the room. A tall alien male in dark robes was watching him. When their eyes met, the man smiled, not warmly, but like a hunter spotting prey. Then just as silently as he had appeared, he was gone. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The guest quarters they had given him were too quiet, and the shadows seemed to move when he wasn't looking. His thoughts kept returning to the princess, and to the strange certainty in her voice when she'd said someone wanted this to happen. Near midnight, a soft sound broke the silence, a faint scrape near the window. Daniel turned, and in the dim blue glow from outside, he saw a thin metallic shape slide between the curtains. It was a small drone, no larger than his hand, and it hovered for a moment before projecting a single line of text in the air. "Do not trust her." The drone spun once, then darted back into the night. Daniel stood there, his mind spinning. Who had sent that message? And more importantly, was it warning him about the princess, or warning him about everyone else? He lay back down, but he didn't close his eyes. He knew now that marriage wouldn't just be a way to escape death. It would pull him into a world of hidden enemies, secret games, and dangers he couldn't yet see. And by the next moonrise, he would be standing beside Princess Lyra, not as a prisoner, but as her husband, whether either of them wanted it or not. The palace gardens at night were nothing like Daniel expected. Moonlight spilled over towering crystal trees that swayed without wind, their branches glowing faintly, as if alive. Pools of still water reflected alien constellations he didn't recognize. It should have been peaceful. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that every shadow was watching him. He had been told to walk here while reflecting on his duties as a future royal consort, but it felt more like being displayed in an open hunting ground. Somewhere behind him, footsteps matched his own pace. Too soft to be a guard's heavy tread, he stopped, and the sound stopped too. From between the glowing trees, the princess emerged. Her gown tonight was a deep shade of green that shimmered like liquid emerald. Her eyes caught the moonlight, sharp and unblinking. "You're not sleeping," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. "Hard to sleep when I'm not sure if I'll wake up," Daniel replied. His voice was quiet, but the truth in it made her pause for a heartbeat. She walked closer, and the strange perfume she wore mingled with the cool night air. "You saw something," she said, studying his face. Daniel thought of the drone and the glowing words it had left behind. He chose his words carefully. "I think someone doesn't want this marriage to happen." The princess's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "You're correct," she said, "and they will act before the ceremony if they can." Her directness caught him off guard. "Why tell me?" he asked. "Because," she said softly, If you die before the joining, I lose more than you do. Her gaze lingered on him, measuring, judging. If you live, you become my shield, willingly or not. Before Daniel could respond, movement flickered at the edge of the garden, a shadow darting between the crystal trees. The princess saw it too. Her eyes hardened, and she spoke quickly in her own tongue. Within seconds, 2 guards appeared from the darkness. But the shadow was already gone. They left the gardens in silence, walking side by side through the silver corridors, just before reaching her chambers. The princess stopped. I don't like you, she said simply. But I will not have my enemies using you to hurt me. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping lower. Trust no one, not even the ones wearing my colors. The doors to her chamber closed, and Daniel was alone again. The words stayed with him, mixing with the drone's warning from the night before. They didn't match, but they both carried the same truth. Something far more dangerous than marriage was closing in. Somewhere in the palace, footsteps echoed in a rhythm that was not meant for him to hear, and Daniel knew the game had already begun. The day of the ceremony began with a sky the color of molten silver. Clouds moved fast over the spires of the palace as if chased by some invisible wind. Inside, the air was tense, every hallway crowded with attendants, rushing in silence. Daniel was dressed in layers of ceremonial fabric so heavy he could barely move. The deep blue and silver patterns shimmered with every step, marking him as part of the royal line now, whether he wanted it or not. He felt like a decorated prisoner walking toward his own trial. The princess was nowhere to be seen, but her presence was everywhere, her crest carved into the pillars, her colors draped along the walls, and her name whispered in the alien tongue by passing servants. Each whisper seemed to grow sharper when Daniel passed. Halfway to the ceremonial chamber, a young attendant stumbled into him, nearly dropping a tray of polished stones. She bowed quickly and whispered in the common tongue, "Don't drink the red wine," before hurrying away. Daniel froze for a moment. Her warning sat heavy in his mind, and he could feel his pulse quicken. Whoever was moving against him was bold enough to slip a message through the palace walls, but not bold enough to reveal themselves. When he finally entered the grand ceremonial hall, the sight was overwhelming. The ceiling was made of living crystal that pulsed faintly with light. Thousands of eyes turned toward him from the tiered balconies above. The alien court was a sea of shimmering robes, and the scent of burning incense hung thick in the air. At the far end stood the princess, her gown a flowing cascade of silver and black. Her expression was perfectly calm, but her eyes told a different story, sharp, scanning the crowd like a predator, looking for the first sign of movement. Daniel took his place beside her. The officiant began to speak in the alien tongue, his voice deep and slow. The words rolled like distant thunder, and Daniel's mind drifted for a second to the warning, "Don't drink the red wine." On the ceremonial table before them sat 2 cups, one filled with clear liquid, one deep crimson. Tradition dictated that the groom drank first. Daniel reached toward the red cup, then paused. His hand shifted to the clear one instead. A murmur swept through the crowd, small at first, then spreading. The officiant hesitated. The princess's gaze flicked to him with the smallest raise of an eyebrow. As he drank, Daniel caught sight of the man in dark robes from days before, standing far in the back of the hall. This time, the smile on his face was gone, replaced with something colder. And for the first time since he arrived on Zyra Prime, Daniel knew that if he made it through this day alive, it wouldn't be because of luck. It would be because he'd learned to play their game, and someone in this room was already losing. The final words of the ceremony were still hanging in the air when the first scream shattered the silence. It came from somewhere in the upper balcony, sharp and short, followed by a sudden crash. The crowd rippled like disturbed water, heads turning, voices rising. Daniel's instincts kicked in before his mind caught up. His hand went to the ornate dagger at his waist, ceremonial, but still sharp enough to matter. The princess didn't flinch, her posture remaining regal, even as her eyes narrowed toward the commotion. Then he saw them, 3 figures in flowing cloaks, leaping from the balcony rails. Their movements were too fast, too precise to be simple panic. Each one landed on the ceremonial floor, drawing weapons that glinted under the crystal ceiling. The guards moved, but the cloaked figures were already advancing. Daniel stepped forward without thinking, placing himself between the princess and the nearest attacker. The first strike came low, aiming for his side. Daniel turned it aside with the dagger, the impact jarring his arm. The princess moved but not backward. She was suddenly beside him, her own slender blade flashing as she caught the second attacker's strike. Her gown swirled like liquid metal, her movements precise, calculated. The third cloaked figure lunged for her directly. Daniel reacted before the guards could close in. He tackled the attacker sideways, both of them hitting the polished floor. Hard, the weapon clattered away, but a cold hand gripped his collar, pulling him close. The attacker's voice was a hiss. "You should have drunk the red wine." Daniel's blood ran cold, but his grip tightened. He drove the dagger hilt into the attacker's ribs, forcing them to release. Guards swarmed in, dragging the cloaked figures away in a flurry of shouts and flashing weapons. The hall was chaos, nobles standing, voices raised in alarm. The officiant had vanished. Attendants were rushing to seal the doors, and above it all, the princess stood with her head high, her voice cutting through the noise. "The ceremony stands. The bond is sealed. Let every witness here remember who tried to break it." Her gaze found Daniel, and for the first time since they met, there was no trace of coldness in her eyes, only something sharper, something that felt like acknowledgement. As the guards pushed the attackers from the hall, Daniel realized this wasn't the end of the danger. It was only the first open strike. Whoever wanted him gone wasn't finished, and now, whoever they were, they had failed in front of the entire royal court. That meant their next move would be worse, much worse. The palace felt different after the attack, not quieter, but heavier. Every hallway seemed to carry the echo of what had happened in the ceremonial hall. Guards were everywhere now, posted at every corner, their eyes scanning for threats, but Daniel knew that whoever was behind the attempt wouldn't be caught so easily. He was taken to the royal quarters for the first time, not as a guest, but as the princess's husband. The chambers were vast, lit by soft golden lamps and lined with shelves of ancient artifacts. But there was no comfort in them. The walls felt like they were listening. The princess dismissed the attendants with a wave of her hand, and when they were alone, she turned to him. "You fought well today," she said, the words slow, deliberate. "But that won't be enough to survive here." Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Good to know. I thought nearly dying on my wedding day was a decent start." Her lips curved faintly, but not in humor. "Today you proved you are more than an inconvenience. That will make you valuable to me, but it will also make you a target to my enemies." She walked to the window, looking out over the glowing city below. "There are factions within this palace that have been waiting for me to stumble. They will not stop until they see me stripped of my claim, or dead." Daniel stepped closer. "And me?" She turned, her eyes locking on his. "You are no longer an outsider. You are tied to me by law, by oath, and now by blood spilled in the same fight. That means killing you weakens me, and that makes you dangerous to them." For a moment, there was only silence between them. The wind from the open window stirred the gold chains in her hair. The tension in her face eased just slightly. "You didn't choose this," she said, almost quietly, "but neither did I." Daniel studied her, realizing that beneath the layers of formality and control, there was a woman who had been fighting her own battles long before he arrived. "Then maybe," he said, "we fight them together." Her gaze held his for a long moment, and for the first time, there was no mask between them. She gave a single nod. "Then you will stay by my side, and if they come for one of us, they will have to face us both, outside." The city lights shimmered against the night sky, but deep within the palace walls, Daniel knew the game was far from over. Marriage had saved his life, but now it bound him to a war he didn't yet understand, and to a princess who might one day be the only one he could trust.